Welcome back once again, YouTube. Thanks for joining me. Today I have another maintenance video on obviously the orange machine. Again, if you haven't seen the other videos, this is a 2004 Gallardo, and this process should work on any pre-LP 2004 to 2008 Lamborghini Gallardo. Today I'm going to tackle the fuel filters. There's a couple really good videos out there on YouTube doing the fuel filters on these. I might skip some of the detail just to speed this video up a little bit, save a little bit of time. One of the things I haven't seen anybody do yet is use anything other than genuine fuel filters. Maybe there's a reason for that. I don't know. We're going to experiment and find out. So based off of all the internet research that I have done, these Bosch fuel filters should interchange just fine. So I'll let you guys know if I'm right, wrong, or indifferent. Either way, they're considerably cheaper, and to me it's worth the time and the effort to try and find out. So here's what you got in here. Do this one-handed or not. Here, set it up here. How's that? Here's the Bosch part numbers, information for those of you guys that are hardcore into that stuff, in case these do work out and you guys want to do the same thing. And you've got a bunch of brass, copper, sorry, no, those aren't brass, copper crush washers in here as well, included. So everywhere I've looked, the genuine Lamborghini filters that everyone sells seem to vary in price. I've seen them from about $140 to about $240 a piece. I picked these up off of Amazon for like $21 a piece. So if this works out, it's going to be an enormous savings. Not to mention, you know, I don't know what the labor charge would be on each one of these. Hour a piece, maybe. I don't know, just rough guessing. Maybe some of you guys know. Let me know. Be curious to find out. So anyway, the only difficult part about this that I can tell is just going to be unburying them. I got to remove all this paneling, so I'll do this quickly, save a little bit of time, and do one at a time. I'll tackle the driver's side first, then we'll tackle the passenger side here. And then we got to deal with the coolant reservoir being in the way over there, and get a charcoal filter, something like that in the way over here. Anyway, we'll get them unburied first. That's going to be the biggest thing with this car, as far as I can tell, is just getting to them. They're buried back here. So anyway, enough ado. Let's get to it. So if you've never worked much on these cars before, get used to pulling these panels out to access everything. They make the engine bay look nice and clean. Unfortunately, to do much anything, seems like you're always having to pull them out of the way. Best I can tell, don't know if it's standard or not, but these are all Torx all the way around here. Looks to me, as far as I can tell, I've got a mixture of T20 and T25s all around here. So we'll make sure we go around, pull all those off. What we're obviously going to have to do in order to get these side panels off is pull the gas struts off. Do that one at a time. Make sure you prop this thing up with a stick or something so it doesn't fall on your head. Alright, so now that we got all the paneling and everything out of the way, you can see buried right down there in the corner underneath all that, that's the fuel filter we're going to get to. So now we got to get all that crap out of the way. So the next issue we need to deal with is to get this charcoal canister out of the way. As you can see, we've got two vacuum fittings here with quick disconnect fittings. We're going to need to squeeze on both of these tabs and ideally pull this off. We'll see how that goes, both of those. And then we got two 13mm bolts right back here. We're going to have to get loose once we get those lines off. Then we're delicately and carefully going to try and get this thing wiggled out of here. May have to cut a zip tie or two to create a little more room. I want to be super careful not to tweak or break anything off. I don't want to get too violent with anything. I don't want to break fittings. Cost myself more money or effort than what is absolutely necessary. I'm sure the camera isn't going to pick it up. There's actually quite a bit of pressure on this, the way it's angled. It's kind of got a harsh angle here where the fitting connects. So I'm actually going to pull this loose to see if I can pull this canister out just slightly to square up this fitting before I try reefing on anything. We'll see if that works out any better or not. very carefully. And number 2. So I think I'm going to cut the zip tie to get myself a little bit more room to get in here. Get to this other one, and we'll try and wiggle this thing out of the way. Let me go ahead and snake out the retaining bracket and get that out of my way. I need every inch for my fat little fingers to work back here. There we go. The key is to get a proper angle to really squeeze on these hard. Ever so gently and delicately. So finally, after much wiggling and finessing, getting this thing out of there, that was a bigger pain in the butt than anybody made it out to be. Part of the problem is it's got this little lip right here on the back that keeps catching everything. But now that we got that out of the way, we can access things a little bit more. And it looks like I got a little piece of, this is just totally rotted vacuum hose that went to this line here. I'm gonna have to replace before we put it back together. Just old brittle plastic, that's the biggest, and rubber, that's the biggest issue with these older cars. They get so much heat back here. Hear about the coolant hoses and all sorts of things getting brittle, and that's exactly what happens to rubber and plastic after age and heating and cooling. Alright, so now with the canister out of the way, we can get a good clear view of the filter here. So we got a little retaining bracket here with one torque screw holding it on there. I haven't figured out what size it is yet. Now we've got what looks to be another quick disconnect there on the back side, and then we'll get that broken loose first, and then I will figure out what size this is, and we'll get that thing out of there. And Lord willing, those Bosch filters we got will interchange with this. So this little guy down here turned out to be a T25. Got it loosened up a little bit. Now I can move the filter around a tad. I can reach my short arms back there and get that quick disconnect undone. Alright, so it ended up being a 17 and a 19 millimeter for these two fittings here. See if I can get these broke loose real quick. Just like so. Now I can finish undoing this and we can get this filter out of there. Finally, sweet success. So here we've got the new Bosch filter up against the Lamborghini filter that we just pulled out of here. Everything looks pretty well visible, identical, or at least really, really close. So let's go ahead and see if I can get the fitting swapped over. So if you guys noticed, when I pulled this apart, there was this little O-ring on the back side here that is tore up pretty good, pretty well split. So I have quite an assortment of O-rings here. As far as I can tell, this one might be a tad more swollen. They look really, really identical. So I'm gonna go ahead and run a new O-ring here. Stick that on with this filter as well. We'll check this thing really good for leaks once the fuel pump has primed the system before I put things back together. So here it is, got the fittings all swapped over. This is our Bosch filter ready to go back in the car. As you guys know, I like to date, put mileage on everything I swap out, if not for my own reference. Maybe someone else down the road in the future will appreciate it. So let's see if we can get this thing back in the car. So here we are, all hooked up and installed. Like I said, I'm going to take my sweet time, go slow with this, double check everything as I go. I'm going to go ahead and prime the fuel pump. I'm just going to let this sit for a little bit. I just really want to make sure that we don't have any leaks or anything going on before we even attempt to start this thing or move to the other side. All right, so far everything looking real good. Everything stayed dry. I don't see any issues. Just got a nice new little piece of hose for this vacuum hose here. So I'm going to go ahead and get this thing wiggled into place, and then we're going to work on trying to wrestle that canister back in here and button this thing up. All right, so now that we're going back together, the only thing I can think of is I really must have been fighting that little lip on the back of this canister, because it's gone back together, slipped right in there a whole lot easier than the way it came out. So anyway, I'm just going to work on wrestling this bracket back on here, and then we'll get these lines connected and pretty much a reverse of the way this thing came apart. And this part will be done. As you can see, she's running. No signs of leaks. Left it pressurized, ran it for a while, let it set. So now I'm comfortable at this point that things are functional as they should be. Everything's secured. We'll go ahead and get the panel back on this side. Like I said, I'm just doing one side at a time, and then we'll go ahead and swap it over here and see what this side holds. Definitely that canister, fighting that in and out of there, is by far the worst part of the job on the driver's side here. Just take your time. Like I said, maybe I was a little bit slow because it was my first time actually doing this project as well. I don't know. Either way, it's done, and so far these filters seem to be functioning just fine. So I may have potentially saved myself quite a bit of money. Anyway, we're halfway there, guys. On to the next side. Alright guys, so here you are. Moving on to the other side. You can see I've already got the panel off. Once you get the panel off, that exposes that coolant expansion tank. We're going to go ahead and have to try and remove that and get that out of the way. Our filter is kind of like the other side, buried. Hopefully this is not quite as invasive as removing that charcoal canister, but we will see. I got these two little hoses here we got to remove. I'm going to try and be gentle with these things. They're a bit on the brittle side. They definitely need replaced. These are kind of a notorious weak leak on the older Gallardos if they haven't been dealt with before. They're 19 years old, and plastic and rubber doesn't age well, especially when it's exposed to heating and cooling cycles. But I'm hoping I can do that without damaging them, because I'd really like to save that for a project for another day. So anyway, I'm going to start by getting the coolant out of this thing, and then we'll see if we can get those broken loose without damaging them before I go any further. Like I said, these hoses are super brittle. I know they need dealt with. I just don't want to do it right now. So I've been spraying them with a little bit of silicone lubricant, letting them sit for a little bit. I'm going to take one of these tools and I'm just gently, ever so gently, just trying to work it loose. I don't want to wiggle it too much. I don't want to get too aggressive with them. Just going to wiggle it a little bit. See if I can break them loose right about where that clamp likes to hold them. Feel like I'm getting a little bit of headway on them. I'll spray them a little bit more now that I know I've got them cracked loose a little bit and let that sit. Like I said, I really don't want to disintegrate these lines. We'll see what happens. And now that I feel like I've gotten these broken good and loose, I'm just going to gently try and work them down nice and slow. And I see some movement. There goes one. And two. A little bit of coolant left in there. I got everything out of the reservoir I could, but obviously couldn't quite get it all. Just a little bit of dribble. We'll top it off when we complete the project. So now let's see if we can get this thing unbolted. Don't know what may be hidden yet, but I know for sure we've got one fastener right here. This one's going to be a metric number 5 hex bit. Get this loose and see what else might be holding this thing in here. Shift it this way a little bit. You can see we've got, I'll get those on video after, a couple little alignment rubbers on this side I can feel, and then we should have one more hose, yeah, kind of connected in the back underneath side here. We'll see if we can get to. So let's see if I can get the camera back here. I don't know if we can see it or not. There is one more larger hose right there on the back that I need to undo on the bottom. So I'm gonna reach down there, see if I can get that hose clamp off. Oops. Work this thing off without pulling on anything too hard, too much. Get this tank out of the way. Slightly tricky because it's a short hose and my arms are short as well. But once we get that back hose broken loose, finally break this free, get it clear, and now we have access and visibility of the other buried filter. So if you've never done this before, like I haven't, now that I've got it out and give you guys a little bit clearer picture, you've got these little 2 alignment holes right here. The line to the side here is going to go in there, and then literally just have the one, said the 5mm holding that on there. You got your 2 hoses on the front here, and the one larger there in the back. Right here, now you can see that out that it's off, and then now we have access to the fuel filter. So as you guys can see, just like the other side, you've got the quick release fitting in the back there. We've got our Torx in the center, clamping it down, and then your fitting here on the outside. A few hoses and vacuum hoses and things here in the way to kind of maneuver around, of course. But in order to save a little bit of time here, kind of skip that part, just like the other side. We'll get it out, swap over the fittings, and then we'll wrestle the new one back in there. So here we are. As you can see, we've got the new filter in place. Everything swapped over just like the other side. Now that we've got that done, we're going to go ahead and work on working the coolant expansion tank back into place, getting our little hoses and whatnot connected, just a reverse of how we disconnected it. I'll speed the process up in the essence of time. One thing I failed to mention, even though we're doing the video and I try to make it look quick, is I have taken and paid particular attention and extra time to make sure, double check that both ends of these fittings are not leaking before you put things back together. I primed the fuel pump, let the system prime, put some rags around it, just really make sure that it's not seeping or you don't have any leaks that could potentially be absolutely catastrophic. Just finished filling the expansion tank, reservoir, whatever you want to call it, back up. Before we put any of the covers or anything back on, we're going to go ahead and fire this thing up just like we did the other side, run it for a while, check, not just for fuel leaks, but make sure we got all our clamps snug, no coolant leaks on this side as well. Well, as you guys can see, it appears we have no leaks. Everything seems to be functioning as it should. I feel comfortable at this point and go ahead and get the covers back on here, and we're going to take this thing out for a drive. Not a bad project, a little bit tedious and time consuming if you have some relatively basic mechanical aptitude skills. Just bring some patience along with you. This is certainly a job that you can tackle. And like I said, I use these Bosch filters for $21 and some change a piece. So for a few hours of my time and roughly $45, we've completed this task. So hopefully, if you guys have been thinking about it, you feel comfortable tackling this project yourself, and hopefully you can save yourself a whole lot of money. Thanks for watching, you guys. Feel free to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.